I did melt down. It was a very difficult day. I found out that no one really wants to move back to Utah. Anyway, I just need to put on a brave face and be as enthusiastic as possible because this is where we're going to end up. Pretend. That's the word I'm looking for. I have to pretend.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's Sarah and welcome back to my channel. Well, last night was the highly anticipated return of Sister Wives, the season 16 premiere. And I'm gonna say it didn't disappoint. While we talked a lot, and I mean a lot, about lot lines in this episode, it's still, and this season so far seems to just be a carryover of last season. It is so interesting. Like, for me as a viewer, I'm watching this in a completely different way, knowing that Christine is going to leave. Her conversation with Meri, I'm seeing that in a totally different light. Every interaction with Cody, it also gives me a new perspective on Cody's relationship with Meri and Cody's relationship with Jenelle. And I think it really is shining a light on Robyn being much more heavy-handed in the relationship. Cody almost seemed meek and, treading lightly when he was talking to her about, Christine wanting to move to Utah. So we have a lot to discuss. So in the beginning of this episode, we see Meri's reaction. The end of last season was all of them sitting around at Coyote Pass, and Christine is really trying to convince everyone to move to Utah, and it's not going well. And Christine is getting really upset, and Meri tried to comfort her by saying, "Hey, look how shitty my marriage is."
All right, I can't do marriage with Cody anymore. I don't want to just look at the mountain. I don't want to do it anymore. You don't get to give up like that.
I see value in our family. I see value in all the relationships. I know that things don't fix or heal if you walk away. So when Christine is saying these things to me, I recognize the emotion.
You didn't put 30 years into this, 25, 28, wherever you are, to walk away. I didn't put 30 years in to walk away.
And then, Cody had this explanation for how he too suffers through polygamy right along with his wife.
So Meri and I haven't even been in a full marriage for about 5 years. She went through a catfishing experience. I really thought she was going to leave. Even our last anniversary, I just kind of made it clear to her that we probably weren't getting back together in a full marriage. I mean, I'm not kicking her out. I'm just letting her know where the relationship with me is at.
I've mentioned this in previous videos, but he actually states here that I'm not kicking anybody out, even though he's not interested in acting like a married person with Meri, or really Jenelle, but Jenelle seems to have way less of a problem with that. He seems to think that he too is doing this struggling so that in the end there'll be more blessings in heaven type thing, because he's so unhappy with these women, yet he doesn't kick anyone out, and he deserves some kudos, a trophy, I don't know. And Christine, she humors Meri, she engages Meri, but ultimately she's like, nah, this is not for me.
I recognize the feelings, because I've been there. I am there.
I appreciate everything Meri is saying. I do. She's lived through a lot. But her relationship with Cody certainly isn't one that I would want.
Watching this scene, I almost saw it click for Christine. Like, if I don't leave, I will be Meri. At least Jenelle and Cody have a friendship, and Jenelle seems to be genuinely cool with being independent, seeing Cody sometimes. She doesn't even seem to be super pissed off that Cody seems to be blaming Gabriel and Garrison for not seeing them during COVID. So, Cody's sitting around with the wives and he's lamenting the fact that they're being separated during quarantine. Actually, I really don't think he's lamenting the fact that he's not seeing everyone often. I think he's lamenting the fact that he has to feel bad about it. So he blames Christine. You know, Christine has chosen to travel, which, I mean, it was for a necessary procedure for his daughter, so fuck off. But he also says that Gabriel and Garrison chose to have a social life, which, okay, you know, if it's like really early on in the quarantine, obviously everybody had to alter their lives drastically. This was an unprecedented time, and people truly didn't know how to navigate this situation. I will say that I can appreciate Cody being cautious and taking measures to not only protect himself, but to protect others. I can definitely appreciate that. But I will say that I actually have friends. One is a nurse anesthetist and the other is a nurse practitioner. They're married. They have a toddler, and they've gone through COVID, taken the necessary precautions, and still seen family members. Like, you know, it's people, they have been smart about it and followed protocols, but they haven't isolated or neglected whole ass factions of their family. It's just, I'm thinking like, Cody is taking precautions, but even the frontline workers are adjusting and adapting, and he could absolutely do that and not blame his children or his other wives for him only holding up with Robyn during the quarantine. And like I said in the beginning of this video, Cody just reacts so differently to Robyn. You know, he wanted to talk to all of the wives about Christine's dismay about not moving back to Utah and about actually building on Coyote Pass, but he really only talked to Jenelle and Robyn. So either he didn't talk to Meri at all or they just didn't show it. I suspect he probably just doesn't give a shit what Meri thinks. I think that's pretty obvious, and he probably just didn't even talk to her.
So frustrating that this is like a question. I mean, we just got here to Flagstaff, and I've invested myself here. Made it really clear once we moved here, like, I'm not interested in being a transient family. My kids are very happy here in Flagstaff. I want to make it work. This is what I want to do. I don't feel like I really have a choice to move to Utah because of what people in Utah will treat our family like. I was afraid of people finding out about my family.
I just keep thinking that normal people in Utah sort of see us separate from those other polygamists.
My kids will be the ones, our kids will be the one that is put on the chopping block, the altar.
Okay.
I wish we could just settle down. Like, we're here, we're in Flagstaff, it's beautiful. Like, you guys are okay moving all the time, constantly, I guess.
I'm
I'm
really
so
not.
frustrated that we're constantly bringing up, where should we go? I'm like, we gotta find a place and make it home.
No, I'm okay.
So just a couple things that really struck me in this clip. One, it's like, he's like, you know, Robyn is obviously getting upset. She's getting upset. Her plan is to stay in Flagstaff. Even though they moved there because her son was going to school and he's dropped out of that school. And it really makes very little sense for them to stay in Flagstaff. Like, objectively, St. George makes a whole lot more sense, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But in this video, he's like, no. Like, he's speaking in a very hushed tone. When he speaks to Jenelle, it's much more boisterous. And I just find that he seems to concede very easily to what Robyn wants. Now, we do see at the end of this episode, they gave us a sneak peek for the rest of the season, and he does seem to get very exasperated at one point of everybody thinking that Robyn's in charge, and he says he doesn't have a head wife, so it'll be interesting to see that come to a head. A few other things that I found really interesting about this clip is Robyn was saying how she basically had to live not in fear, but she couldn't be open and honest about the lifestyle and the family that she came from because she lived in a plural family in St. George. Like, she couldn't join school sports teams and clubs and whatnot, and that she didn't want that for her kids. But really, are you being, well, I mean, you're on a TV show, so I guess you are being open and honest about your lifestyle now, but really, since polygamy has been decriminalized in Utah, it's really like living anywhere. I mean, would a quote regular or typical polygamous family just be super outspoken about it in, let's say, California or some other state? I have no idea. And so the way I see it, so Robyn's whole family lives in St. George. Cody has an affection and did have an open mind to moving back to Utah, to the St. George area. Christine's, all her kids are relocating to Utah. Mary's B&B is in Utah. Meri said, though, that she doesn't want to grace Utah with her presence. But I don't know. It just really doesn't, to me, building on Coyote Pass actually makes less sense than moving back to reunite this family, in my opinion. Additionally, you know, Robyn is talking about not wanting to uproot her kids, but it's like, you've done nothing but uproot these kids. Like, first they moved from Lehigh to Vegas, then from Vegas you guys have moved to Flagstaff. Like, these kids have been uprooted, and other wives' kids have had really hard times making these moves, and nobody seemed to give a shit about them before. So I just found this really, like, objectively, it does not make a whole lot of sense to stay in Flagstaff. I think Jenelle and Meri just are cool with it because, you know, for Meri, Mariah is off with her fiance. It's, you know, she's an empty nester essentially. And according to Meri's social media, she really likes to road trip, so driving long distance doesn't bother her. Jenelle seems to be happier than get out, to be living in an RV. I still really don't understand that, but to each their own. Is moving to reunite your family unit more beneficial than staying separated and having your sibling, not being able to see your siblings and all that? Like, weigh the pros and cons, in my opinion. And then towards the end of the episode, there was just a couple things Meri said that made me facepalm hardcore. Take a look at this.
Anytime Cody calls me a wife, I'm good with that. Let's act as such, and then maybe things will get to be as such. Shoot, maybe I should build here. Then he'd come and visit me. So where's our problem?
So she gets giddy when Cody refers to her as his wife, thinking that maybe the more you say it, the more she might be able to manifest their relationship back into existence. And then she also says maybe she should take that second lot because then maybe if she builds there, he'll visit her, insinuating that he never fucking sees her. I think Christine leaving is really Christine just realizing that she doesn't want to be Jenelle or Meri. Jenelle and Cody have a friendship and an affection for each other, but there doesn't seem to be like romantic heat in that relationship. I think Christine was still holding out that she could rekindle that with Cody at, like, through COVID, after COVID, what have you. And that she, you know, Meri is just telling her, suck it up and suffer, essentially, which you guys already know. I don't agree with that at all. So Meri thinks that her relationship is still salvageable, even though Cody has said it's not. He's just not gonna divorce her. So Christine realizes she's never going to be Robyn to Cody. So she'll be Christine to herself. And, you know, just seeing from the cameos that she's done for viewers, there is an air of confidence about her that we definitely aren't seeing here. on the show as the season 16 premiere. So for me, I'm just so happy for her. Like, this is such an exciting time, and I'm really proud of her for realizing that this doesn't have to be her lot in life, no pun intended. What did you guys think of this season 16 premiere? Were you like me? Does the news about Christine leaving just make how you're watching? It's like knowing the end of a suspense movie or like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and then it changes the way you watch the movie. I remember seeing The Sixth Sense for the first time, and then I had to rewatch it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. That's kind of how I'm watching season 16. It's like all of these things start coming together, and it's not just watching miserable marriages anymore, for lack of a better way to describe it. Now we're actually gonna see some action, and we're actually gonna see Cody's foundation is cracked. I mean, it already was cracked, but now some major moves are being made. Make sure you like this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Reality Squad, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care. Have a good one. Much love.